Welcome to Reading the Bible with Daniel. So today I'm going to start the book of Exodus. The book of Exodus is in the Old Testament, which is also known as the Pentateuch, and it's also known as the Torah in Hebrew. So this is the second of 5 books, the first 5 books of the Old Testament, known as the books of Moses. We got Genesis, which we just finished reading, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. The first 5 books of the Old Testament are the books of Moses. And I'm going to be reading out of the New King James Version Bible. So here we go. Genesis was 50 chapters long. Exodus is going to be only 40 chapters long, so hopefully it won't take me as long. So in order to make things go a little bit faster and smoother, I think I'm going to try to do 2 chapters per video. So before we begin the book of Exodus, the book of Genesis ended with the death of Joseph. And it was quite an interesting, I really enjoyed reading about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Joseph, who was Jacob's favorite son, the chosen son. So let's get on with the book of Exodus. Here we go. Israel suffering in Egypt. Now these are the names of the children of Israel who came to Egypt. Each man and his household came with Jacob. Reuben, Simon, Levi, and Judah. Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin. Dan, Nepal, Gad, and Asher. Verse 5. All those who were descendants of Jacob were 70 persons, for Joseph was in Egypt already. And Joseph died, all his brothers, and all his generation. But the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly, multiplied and grew exceedingly mighty, and the land was filled with them. Verse 8. Now there arose a new king over Egypt, who did not know Joseph. Verse 9, and he said to his people, look, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. Verse 10, come, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply. And it happened in the event of war that they also joined their enemies and fight against us, and so go up and out of the land. Verse 11, therefore they set taskmasters over them to afflict them with their burdens, and they built for Pharaoh supply cities, Pithom and Ramses. Verse 12, but the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew, and they were in dread of the children of Israel. So the Egyptians made the children of Israel serve with rigor. Verse 14, and they made their lives bitter with hard bonding in the mortar and brick, and all that manner of service in the field. All their service in which they made them serve was with rigor. Verse 15, then the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives, of whom the names, one of them was Shipran, and the name of the other Purin. And he said, when you do the duties of a midwife for the Hebrew women and see them on the birth stools, it is a son, then you shall kill him. If it is a son, then you shall kill him. But if it is a daughter, then she shall live. Verse 17, But the midwives feared God and did not do as the king of Egypt commanded them, but saved the male children alive. So the king of Egypt called for the midwives and said to them, "Why have you done this thing and saved the male children alive?" Verse 19. And the midwives said to Pharaoh, "Because the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women, for they are lively and give birth before the midwives come to them." Therefore God dwelt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and grew very mighty. Verse 21. And so it was, because the midwives feared God, that he provided households for them. So Pharaoh commanded all his people, saying, "Every son who is born you shall cast into the river, and every daughter you shall save alive." Chapter 2. Moses is born. And a man of the house of Levi went and took as a wife a daughter of Levi. So the woman conceived and bore a son. And when she saw that he was a beautiful child, she hid him 3 months. But when she could no longer hide him, she took an ark of bushels for him, dubbed it with asphalt and pitch, and put the child in it, laid it in the reeds by the river bank. And the sisters stood afar off, knowing what would be done to him. Verse 5. Then the daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself at the river, and her maidens walked along the river side. And when she saw the ark among the reeds, she sent her maid to get it. Then when she had opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the baby wept. So she had compassion on him and said, "This is one of the Hebrew children." Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and call a nurse for you from the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for you?" And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Go." So the maiden went and called the children's mother. Then Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child away and nurse him for me, and I will give you your wages." So the woman took the child and nursed him, and the child grew, and she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. So she called his name Moses, saying, "Because I drew him out of the water." Verse 11. Moses flees to Midian. Now it came to pass in those days, when Moses was grown, he went out to his brethren and looked at their burdens. And he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his brethren. So he looked this way and that way, and when he saw no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. Verse 13. And when he went out the second day, behold, two Hebrew men were fighting, and he said to one, "Who did the wrong, and why are you striking your companion?" Then he said, "Who made you a prince and a judge over us? Do you intend to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" So Moses feared and said, "Surely this thing is known." Verse 15. When Pharaoh heard of this matter, he sought to kill Moses. But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. Verse 16. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water, and they filled the troughs to water their father's flock. Then the shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and helped them and watered their flock. When they came to Reuel, their father, he said, "How is it that you have come so soon today?" And they said, "An Egyptian delivered us from the hand of the shepherds. And he also drew water. He drew enough water for us and watered the flocks." So he said to his daughters, "Where is he? Why is it that you have left the man? Call him, he may eat bread, that he may eat bread." Verse 21, Then Moses was content to live with the man, and he gave Zipporah his daughter to Moses, and she bore him a son. She called his name Gershom, for he said, "I have been a stranger in a foreign land." Now it happened in the process of time that the king of Egypt died. Then the children of Israel groaned because of the bondage, and they cried out, and their cry came up to God because of the bondage. Verse 24, So Moses heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. And God looked upon the children of Israel, and God acknowledged them. End of chapter 2.